Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from SophieLawson.crunch, and this is episode 255 of the Sophie Art Podcast, which is a little podcast to do about the art and things with me co-host lilDENNiS. And lilDENNiS, well, today is Valentine's Day, the day that I'm recording this podcast, so lilDENNiS is at home making love to Kitty. So hopefully he's having fun, and I hope you have fun with this one as well. This is a walk and talk around the local park, and the topic is going to be, it's almost like a part 2 to last week's about the mind attacks. But I had a realisation last night, or just a thought, and I thought to myself, is it possible that OCD is actually a physical manifestation of what's going on the inside? So that's what this podcast's about. I've got some notes, so let's get into this one. So some of the topics for this one, what happened last night was, I'll put a link as well in the show notes to last week's episode, the mind attacks. But last night, I did a mastermind, and they were talking about how all those thoughts in your head that are sabotaging you, what they are is they're your likes and dislikes. In other words, what's happened is, your entire life is, everything that's been happening in your life has been creating, it's almost like all your experiences in your life are creating, Dougie's ball there, look. Oh, hello. Mad. What was it? What was I saying then? Oh yeah, all your experiences in life are creating thoughts. So it's almost like all the thoughts in your head are actually, they're coming from your experiences. And what's happened is you've had an experience, something's happened, and you've sort of judged the experience, and if you didn't like it, in the future, when something happens which reminds you of that experience, that thought comes up, and I think what's doing is it's sort of trying to protect you from experiencing the thing you don't want to experience, but all of it's actually a lie. So last night I spoke to me mum, and I just had this really cool thought that what happened is, because when it was 2013, I had really bad, up until 2013, I had really bad OCD. It was like really, really bad. And what it would do is it would make me do really, and I knew at the time it was stupid things. Like for instance, if I was walking down the street, a thought would say in my head, you've got to walk, you're only allowed to walk on the left hand side of lampposts. If you don't, something bad will happen. And so what was happening was that thought was controlling the way I was walking. My whole life was controlled by these thoughts that were saying, if you don't do this, something bad will happen. And then one day I watched a programme on Channel 4 about people who were suffering from OCD. I think I've talked about this before in the podcast as well. And the bloke on that said, because they were all experiencing the same thing, where the thoughts were saying, if you don't do this, something bad will happen. And what he said was, it's very windy in this park. What he said was, something bad might happen, but it might not. And what it did was, it made me realise that just because the thought said something, you don't have to do it. So what I started doing was, every time the thought said, you've got to walk the left hand of a lamppost, I'd walk... I think that's my mum ringing. My mum's probably thinking, I forgot to tell her I'm doing let's see if we can get mum on the podcast. Wait a minute. Hello?
Hello, where are you?
I'm just doing a podcast. You're on the podcast now.
Oh, no. I wonder where you are. I thought you were having trouble getting out of work.
No, I did, but I forgot to... I had a thought of doing a podcast this morning.
Oh, right, okay then. So, where are you, in the park?
Yeah.
Oh, all right then. I'll see you in a minute.
Okie dokie.
All right then. I'll see you shortly. Bye.
That's mad. So what happened is, when that bloke said about you don't have to... When I started realising you didn't have to do what the thought said, I started doing it with everything, and then soon the OCD went away. But I've still got little bits of it, but I think there's bits of OCD which are quite good. Like things like organising all your pens in order or something. Little things like that I think are quite good. But it's the weird things like that makes you go... Like my mum, well, this is the thing as well. My mum's got OCD as well. So some of them she's not allowed in certain shops. So she won't go in a shop, even if she wants to go in the shop. The mind says, if you go in the shop, something bad will happen. And another thing I thought about was, all this is like superstitions. So they say like black cats are unlucky or something. Maybe what's happened is, one day a black cat walked in front of someone had a bad experience, and they associated the black cat with that experience. So in a weird way, superstitions are very much like universal OCDs. That's what I'm thinking. So even my mum knows that is silly, but that's the power of these thoughts. They sort of like control you like puppets. So what happens is, like in that OCD thing, your whole life is controlled by these thoughts until you start sort of going against them. But then I thought to myself, well, this is exactly the same as these thoughts when I'm having a conversation with someone. So I'm having like the other day, yesterday, I was going to say bye to everyone at work, and one of the ladies was cleaning the Costa machine, and I went to say bye to her, and I suddenly realised that two of the other workers were standing next to her, and she had her back to me. So what happened was, a thought said, don't say goodbye, just go. Because if you try to say goodbye and she doesn't hear you or something, then you're going to look stupid in front of the other two people. So I suddenly realised that what's happened there is, if those other two people wasn't there, I would have said bye. But the thought was trying to stop me saying bye to this lady, which is a negative thing. So what I did was I just said bye to her, even though there was a thought trying to stop me. And then last night when we had this discussion about these thoughts, I suddenly thought of that moment, and I thought to myself, these thoughts in the head are very much like OCDs. The only thing is, it's not saying you've got to walk around the lamppost a certain way, otherwise something bad will happen. It's just saying, well, it is, but it's doing it in a much more subtle way. Instead of saying something bad will happen, it will say something like, if you don't say bye because you might look stupid if they don't hear you or something. You see what I mean? So what I started thinking was, and then the other thing is, well, in my notes what I've put is, OCD is an overload of inner thoughts. So what I'm thinking is, I'm wondering whether everybody has got these thoughts going on all the time, and some people are not even aware of them. So in other words, they're being controlled by these inner thoughts without even realising it. So their actions, like yesterday, if I hadn't have been aware of that thought, like in the old days when I worked at this other job, before I started meditate, this was around about 2012 as well. Up until that point, I would have just not said goodbye to anyone, but I didn't know why I wasn't saying goodbye to someone. I just thought it's because I was shy. Well, what was happening was there was this thought saying, "Don't say bye because you might look a fool if it's a fear of rejection or something, I think." And then suddenly what happens is, and I think it's meditation that's helped me with this one, because what happens is with meditation you're listening to everything, like you're listening without judging. And then what happens is in your waking day, what happens is all these thoughts, you start being aware of all these thoughts. So what I'm thinking is, OCD is like an overload of these inner thoughts. In other words, these inner thoughts are going so crazy, they got so much control over you that they actually manifest into the physical as like OCD. That's what I'm thinking. And then I've also put in my notes, I've put negative shapes really are key. Yeah, because that bloke on that thing, he said something bad might happen, but it might not. And all that is it's exactly the same as these negative shapes when you're doing drawings. In other words, you can focus on the finger, you can focus on the object, or you can focus on the space around the object. Well, it's the same with these thoughts. You can focus on the negative thought, or you can focus on the not negative thought. In other words, something bad might happen, you can focus on that, and that will stop you doing the thing. Or you can say, well, something bad might not happen. So if you focus on that, you'll do the thing you want to do. You see how cool it is? It's a very cool psychological thing. But you can sort of see how complicated it is. That's what I'm thinking. And I've also put in my notes, mind attacks equal control. Yeah, they are controlling you in subtle ways based around fear, forcing your decisions in life. So in other words, the OCD is very visual. It's very instant. You're walking down the pavement and the negative thought says you're not allowed to walk on the pink paving stones, or something bad will happen. So instantly you're avoiding these pink pavement stones. Whereas on the inside your head, it's way more subtle. But it's exactly the same thing, I'm thinking. Yeah, I've put in my notes, I've put OCD is an extreme version of it. And then I've put learn to face OCD by challenging the thought and seeing that nothing bad happens. Or if something bad does happen, it doesn't matter anyway. So it's the same with these inner thoughts. Challenge them. I've put maybe I'm looking at them. I can't read me writing here. Maybe I am looking at them for funny, but maybe I'm not. I don't know. But in my notes I've also put, maybe you do think maybe I'm not a fight. Wait a minute, there's something here, but I've not. You've got to challenge your inner thoughts. That's what I've put in my notes. Maybe they do think I'm something, but maybe they don't. What I mean there is, yesterday with saying goodbye to that lady, the inner thought was saying, don't say bye, because you might make a fool of yourself if she doesn't hear you. But then what I was saying was, the way to challenge that is to say, well, maybe she won't hear me and I won't make a fool. Or maybe I do make a fool, but it doesn't matter if I make a fool anyway. And then what I've also put in my notes is, it's not a fight. So you're not fighting the thoughts. It's not like the thought comes up and says, right, you're only allowed to walk on the left-hand side of the lamppost. So it's not like you say, right, I'm only walking on the right-hand side. Because what happens then is, the thought, this is how clever the thoughts are, the thought can then adapt and say, right, I know you're going to do the opposite, so even if you're doing the opposite, you're still under control by these thoughts. So what you have to end up doing is, if you want to walk on the left-hand side of the lamppost, walk on the left-hand side. If you want to walk on the right, walk on the right. But don't walk on the left just because this thing's saying you got to do, like yesterday. It's exactly the same thing. So I've put, it's not a fight, it's an experiment. And what I like about experiments is there's no right or wrong way to do it. So yesterday, if I had said goodbye and she didn't hear me, and I felt like a fool, because what happens is, when the thought says something like you'll look stupid, it's almost like I visually see like someone laughing at me or something. So what I'm saying is, let's say they did start laughing at you, it's an experiment. So all you got to do is just use that as an experiment and sort of think, like every experience is an experiment, really. It's something like that. So in my notes, I've just put negative shapes really are key. Yeah, this is why I love art. What I love about art is, very much like the way OCD is like a physical manifestation of like the inner thoughts controlling us. What I'm thinking is, like, it's almost like art is a physical way of showing what's happening to help you. But I also wondered to myself whether OCD is actually a positive thing as well. Because if I didn't have OCD, maybe I wouldn't have started meditating. Maybe I wouldn't have become aware of the thoughts on the inside as well. It is very much like, in a weird way, nothing really is negative. It's all just experiences. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say. I just like the thought. I don't know if I've explained this. The way last night I really felt it. Yeah, because what I said to my mum was, I said, with OCD, it's physically controlling you to, like, in other words, you're physically doing things. You're walking, like some of them would say stuff like, when you're going to work, you've got to walk down this certain road, even if it was like longer and it made no sense. So in that instance, it's physically sort of, it's controlling you, and it's also, I would say, sabotaging your day in a strange way, because it's making you do stuff there's no need to be doing. And the inside mind attacks are doing the same thing. Bless you. Yeah, so OCD is physically controlling you. The inner minds are, I would say, mentally controlling you. But it always ends up becoming physical anyway, because these mental thoughts in the end, they create your actions, like. And then the other thing that's brilliant about this is, last night when she said in the mastermind about all of these thoughts, like these sabotaging thoughts and things, all they are is your likes and dislikes from your experiences. So what I thought to myself was, let's say for the next 2 months, every time the thought says something, I do the opposite. What's going to happen at some point? What's going to happen at some point is I'm going to have new thoughts in my head, which will be positive ones. In other words, In other words, instead of, but like the example yesterday, saying goodbye, the thought that popped up was, don't say bye because you might look a fool. So it might be that in the past I had an experience, because I do talk quite quietly. So maybe someone didn't hear me, and I felt like a fool. So the thought was based off of that experience, and it didn't want me to experience feeling like a fool again. But what happens now is, yesterday I said bye, which has created a positive experience. So in the future, next time I go to say bye to someone, the thought might pop in. I think what will happen at first is the thought will pop in to say, don't say bye, you might look a fool. And then another thought will pop in saying, but you said bye last time and you didn't look like a fool. So it's almost like that will give me confidence to do it again. And then at some point, what I'm thinking is, at some point, that first thought of saying, don't say bye, you might look a fool, that might not even be there anymore. The only thought that would be there will be, say bye. In other words, at some point, I'm wondering whether there won't be any thoughts. You'll just say bye without thinking about anything. So in a strange way, this is a bit like habits. Again, very much like drawing. The way you get good at, like say, doing gesture drawing is you just keep drawing gesture drawings. But whilst you're drawing the gesture drawings, you have to be critical of your drawings. So it's this balance between doing a gesture drawing, like letting your hand do the drawing, but also thinking about what you've just drawn and comparing it to what you wanted. This is very much like the article that I did a couple of weeks ago. The article, the balance between thinking and feeling. Because it was all about putting movement in. Well, movement in your drawings is basically based on these gestures. So it is. Like art is perfect. The thing about art is you are using, at some points you're completely in the zone, you're not thinking, but then at some points you are thinking. So you need to be thinking at some points, but there's other times when thinking isn't good. So again, what I'm thinking here is, like some of these thoughts that I'm thinking are negative, they might be positive, but I'm thinking they're all negative. It is complicated. I can feel that this is quite sort of, it feels to me quite important, and I like the thought of doing it as an experiment, because again, with the experiment you can try everything and just see what happens, but you've sort of got to be taking notes of all your experiences. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, there's a little magpie on the grass. It's a beautiful day today. It was like really cold this morning and sort of miserable looking, and then about an hour ago suddenly the sun came out, and for me, I love this. It is weird how the sun, for me the sun is so positive. Yeah, little seagull flying around. He's quite happy, he does. For me, it's amazing how, like, the weather's so important, really. Can't wait to see all the leaves coming back on the trees, though. It's going to be cool, it is. Where's the, I don't think. No. So that's it, I think, for this one. I've never had that connection before between OCD and what I'm going through at the moment. And another thing that's positive about this is I overcame OCD, which had complete control of my life. Like, really, my whole life was controlled by OCD. And as soon as I sort of faced one of it, the whole lot just sort of tumbled. So the other thing about this is, again, it's that same thing about these experiences. It's amazing how things that have happened in the past helps you in the future, because you think everything's all like separate, but for me, I'm realising, like, really, for me, everything comes down to thoughts. I'm convinced everything comes down to thoughts. Very much like in a dream, you have a thought and instantly that thought is manifested. In this physical, I'm sure it's the same thing happening, but you don't realise it because there's this massive time delay. So this is why I think these thoughts are so important to sort of get to grips with, because the whole of life is based around thoughts. And another thing that they said last night on a mastermind, which I thought was beautiful, was that she visualised it as like a cloud in the sky. And when she was talking, what I visualised was, I saw like a river of water, and it was almost as if the thoughts were coming out of this river as raindrops. Yeah, that's the only way I can describe it. And all these raindrops were, in other words, you could go into the river if you wanted and get the thoughts out, or the thoughts would come out of the river and get on you, like. But the way she described it was amazing, about this like cloud, because she's an artist as well with music, and she was saying about, because there's this thing as well. See, the way I visualised it last night was, I visualised it as like, I visualised it almost as if there was like two rivers, and one river was, well, it was almost like one river was raining thoughts on you, but then the other river was, you could go into the river and get whatever thoughts you wanted out of it. So then I just had a thought now of, what if there's only one river, but you can either be above or below it. So in other words, if you're below the river, the thoughts are raining down on you. If you're above the river, you're going to be dry, but you can go into the river when... So in other words, there's a river of these thoughts, and it's just what side of that river are you going to be on? Are you going to be on the side where the thoughts come onto you? So in other words, the thoughts are going to control you, or are you going to be on the side where you can go into the river and get whatever thoughts you want? Yeah. But the other thing that's cool about looking at it like that is, if all these thoughts which are like raindrops, if they fall on you, you're going to get wet, but in the end you'll get dry again. So even if the thought comes onto you, it doesn't stick on you. Well, it might stick on you, but it won't stay on you. That's what I'm thinking. So like one day, wouldn't it be nice to be able to go swimming in these thoughts? Like without... I wonder whether someone like Mooji... Does someone like Mooji have any thoughts? Like, Mooji's a spiritual master. Does Mooji have any thoughts? Because like when I'm drawing, when you get lost in a drawing, there's no thoughts. So is Mooji basically almost like in a constant state of drawing? That'd be very weird though. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed that. And all that's left is this week's inspirational quote. And this week's inspirational quote is actually, I've already said it, it's one of the most powerful things I ever heard. I don't know who said it, but it's from a documentary on Channel 4 about OCD. Something bad might happen, but it might not. See if Mum wants to go to the shop. Burr, burr. Burr, burr.
Hello?
Arrow.
Have you finished?
Yeah.
Oh, nice one. Is it warm out?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
quite nice. Do you want to go to the shop?
Yeah, right. Where are you?
I am just near Aldi. Hey, you bad then? You're on the podcast, birthing. I'm still recording.
Oh, no.
Mwahaha. He looks quite funny. Where's these pigeons? I love pigeons. Hey, look, there's one up here on the lamppost. Yeah. Hello. Look, you should come down to say hello. Hello. Cool, isn't it? Pigeons. He's gone. Pigeon Pete. There's something about this dustbin man on here. I've never spoke to him. I always sort of like sort of smile at him, I suppose. Hey, there's my mum. Mummy, come on, wave at me, Mum. Wave! Wave! Mum! Look, she's pretending she can't see me. Go away! Yay! Dun 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 dun. Hello.
Don't do that.